Welcome everyone to episode 7 of Fraud Fact Friday. It's the first live Fraud Fact Friday of the year of 2020. You can believe it, it's 2020. And I thought it would be fitting, and it just so happened that we were in the same room. He's usually on the East Coast of the US, I'm in Germany, but we're in the same room today, and I thought it'd be fitting to have you as the first guest of the new year, since you were the first guest of the show on the show from the launch.
Yeah.
So I thought, hey, let's meet up again and talk some fraud trends. So we are live. Anybody joining, let us know that you're here. I actually am going to pull it up on my screen, but maybe you have some opening words for this first episode.
Yeah, sure. Well, great to be here, first of all, David.
Yeah.
And it's totally spontaneous. And by the way, congratulations on the success with the Fraud Fact Friday, but following it. So nicely done.
Sure.
And yeah, no, definitely excited to talk about some of the things that, we started to embark on last year.
Yeah.
And so much has changed. It's amazing. It's just with technology and all these things we're going to dive into in this episode. But there's just so much on the table that, to talk about with just the new trends and the new threats, new vulnerabilities.
Yeah.
Definitely excited to chat for a couple minutes. So
Cool. Yeah, thanks for coming on again. I'm happy that you're always just ready to go and share knowledge with the community. It's always fun talking. So again, we didn't advertise this in advance. It actually wasn't planned. We didn't make a banner. So we're just going to kind of wing it a little bit and talk some of the things that we talked, I think it was 3 or 4 months ago, the last time. Yeah. So one thing I did notice that I'd like to jump into is you are going to be at an upcoming event, machine learning school. You'll be doing a presentation at a machine learning school. And you are going to be, the title of your presentation, Fraud in a Digital Environment. And in quotes, you say they're psych tech.
Yeah.
So what's that all about?
Yeah, so really excited. It's March 26th, 27th by BigML. It's in Seville, Spain, so a great venue. And what we're going to be doing is really tackling the whole machine learning AI space. It's such a buzzword, right? I mean, you can go to any conference, see any publication. Everyone's talking about it at every level of the financial, institution. So what we're going to be doing is tackling, a lot of the technology aspects, the analytics, road mapping, workflows, things like that. But what I'm doing is, my background in psychology, this is where I really want to visit the drivers behind it, because at the end of the day, right, machine learning, it's about predicting behavior, right? It's not about predicting behavior of robots. It's about predicting behavior of humans, like what we do, why we dress a certain way today. I mean, that's what machine learning is trying to do. It's trying to do it on its own, but you still have to have an understanding of the human, why they're doing what they're doing. What's the core motivating factors. And what I'm going to be doing is exploring criminological theory, inserting it into that. Social aspects of it, how crime, a lot of time financial crime is driven by opportunity. So having an understanding of these psychological aspects will absolutely help with developing a strong ML platform. So it's not like, you can't just go in and buy a platform, plug it in, off it goes. Hey, let's sit back. You have to know what the parameters are. You have to know, why the behavior is being predicted. So that's what I'm going to focus on, is kind of the trajectory of technology.
Okay.
How it's going to be a continued issue for us as we move into the new, 2020, 2021, 22, et cetera. But also, ways to insert that keep that human element involved in that whole tech process. So, yeah, very excited.
Yeah, an interesting combination.
Yep, absolutely.
Very cool. So on the topic of AI and machine learning, if we're looking at companies that are considering these technologies, what do you think they're missing in their current strategy? Why does it even make sense to consider it?
Yep.
And before you answer that, I don't want to interrupt, but maybe someone can just comment. I see there are people here, where you're listening from, and if you have any questions for Dr. Fraud, and also if you can hear us, that'd be a very wonderful, helpful tip. Huh? Yep. So, sorry. Back to the question.
Sure. Yeah.
what are they missing in their strategy that would even make them consider this technology?
Yep. So I think, in years past, we looked at predicting behavior based on what we know in the data, right? Predictive analytics and all those buzzwords that went along with that. And what ML AI does is it takes it to the next step and it attempts to predict and pattern behavior and make a prediction for the future. So this necessarily hasn't happened yet. But what the ML model and platform will do is it will look at all that data that's in your system and it will say, hey, this is what I think the trajectory is going to be. This is what I think you need to look out for. And that's really the difference, because why it's important is because, you're a financial crime fighter yourself. The idea is to keep one step ahead of the criminals, right? Yeah. So that's what this does. You're trying to predict and stop and look at the patterns in your data and try to then, so then you're finding what the predictions could be. But then the key, and this is where really I think the key comes in, is setting those parameters. Like I mentioned a minute ago in my presentation, you still have to have a human, if you will, someone that knows what they're looking at. Very similarly, you couldn't ask someone from a whole other industry, to try to get a handle on what they're seeing in financial fraud data, because it would take a while. There's a learning curve, right? Yeah. So it's important to have those people, those analysts, the managers, even the operational level people, to set the parameter. Well, what is the ML model looking for? Is it, do you have, a motorcycle line of business? Are you concerned with credit cards? And could be any area of financial fraud. So you at least have to set the parameter of the system. Otherwise, it's, looking for carnival stuffed animals. I mean, so you know what I'm saying? It's an exaggeration, but you still have to have that human component. But I tell you, it's it's like, in my opinion, the Lamborghini. I mean, it's just so powerful. But you have to know how to drive the Lamborghini. Otherwise, you just don't know how to shift. You don't know how it handles. So that's, in my opinion, is very, very important, but extremely useful if managed properly. All right.
So that kind of wraps up the tech side of thing of what I wanted to talk about today. And I see that people can hear us. Thank you to Todd Wolf, who actually is going to be my guest next week. And I am producing a banner for that, and that'll be out very soon. So Todd's going to be on the show where we'll be talking, everything vehicle finance fraud related in that space.
Very cool.
So that's going to be an interesting show. But thank you, Todd, for commenting. He said, perfectly said, AI needs human intel to ensure the success of any type of strategy. So there we go with that. That is nice. Digging a little into the insurance industry, more focused. Tell me about the shift in focus that you're seeing within insurance companies, from just pure fraud prevention to more of a holistic claims process optimization.
Yeah, great question. And so where this comes from, I mean, back in 2018, we had roughly, let's say, 17 billion, give or take, devices and in circulation. So this year we're going to have close to 50 billion. If you can imagine that. I mean, if I were to show that on a graph, I mean, it is just, astronomical, the growth in just 2 years, and it's going to continue next year. So this is what that's doing. All those devices, everything, the wearables, the car data, it's putting data into circulation, right? So companies now, I think there's an understanding now, maybe 2 years ago, if you asked me, I would say, companies are starting to really get into data and what they can get from. I think companies now know, right, that data is valuable. But I think the challenge now, it's kind of like, I would say, right, don't go to the grocery store when you're hungry. Right. That's like there's just so much there that companies need to learn now to manage the data and to really, get to the core of what they're looking for, because there's so much information there. So the automation process is so important, because before you could just focus on, fraud solution and fraud detection. And that was okay. And that was throughout the process, but then the results were in the back end. But with the automation and the claim process optimization, what you're doing is you're managing that whole process in a quick way, efficient way, but you're still maximizing on those data sources and all the data that's there. and then you're creating a more focused result, for analysis. So I think, and the thing is, you can do both at the same time. You can have those automated platforms and the fraud detection platforms, and bringing those systems in one place. So that's the key. But yeah, I'm seeing an incredible trend in that automation, in the questions that I'm getting. How can you not just, hey, the data's there. What can I do with it? How can I manage, not having someone manually going through, the databases we have access to, or social media, even the things you can get from that. So how can we automate that whole process? That I foresee being an increased issue. Okay, for sure.
That's a big change within an organization. So there'll definitely need to be some change management processes implemented, getting people on board, getting top management on board. And that's always a challenge. That's maybe where the psychology side comes in the implementation of these more digital processes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sticking with the insurance theme, you recently, I saw that you had an article on SIU Today.
Yeah.
And it's titled, "What are we measuring?" So you're talking about how do we even measure fraud and why that's important. Can you elaborate on that? Maybe what you talked about in the article, where people can find it, maybe?
Yeah, of course. Yeah. So we're gonna we'll post the article on LinkedIn and the platform. So we'll definitely post a direct link to that. And really, what it's about is in a lot of the research I've done with the academic hat I wear, one of the opportunities I see with companies is that, and this is across the board, is that we're measuring different things. Apples to oranges per se. So you have one company that's measuring fraud one way, and then vice versa. So I think the issue there is you're trying to compare those percentages or conversion rates, whatever it is, and it's not really creating consistency. And I'll give you a perfect example. So we just finished up an academic study in collaboration with the Coalition Against Insurance Fraud. And one of the things we actually analyzed was, prosecution data. And one of the immediate things that popped out at us was in some of the Midwest states, it seemed like fraud was less of an issue. Right, their percentages seem to be lower than surrounding areas. Well, what we decided to do, because they seem to be outliers, was we dove into those states to see, well, what is the issue? And this is what we found, that the reporting statutes in those states are a lot looser than those surrounding. Right, so vice versa, they could be more aggressive. So what that's doing, in effect, if you're just looking at the statistics, it's really giving you a false sense of more fraud or less fraud. So then you could take a lackadaisical approach in those states, saying, we got that state covered.
Yeah, no worries.
Let's go somewhere else, where really it could be more of a problem. It's just a matter of the measurement. So, David, great question. And there's so many different levels. I mean, it has to come with the corporate level, internally, but also externally as well. I definitely recommend some sort of even more consistent or universal, even a recommendation, let's say, from a countrywide or even an international basis. To kind of a standard. Right, that companies could look to set those parameters, because otherwise it just literally creates a false sense of what's going on, positively and negatively. So, right, from an insurance company standpoint, if you write in 50 states or even international, right, you might assume, hey, we're doing fine in Italy right now. Yeah, when really you're not. It's a major problem, but it just comes down to the measurement and maybe even some regulation and compliance issues that define fraud. So you have to dig a little bit deeper into those, but definitely worth mentioning in companies in all areas of finance should absolutely take a look at that.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Fraudster podcast. I saw a post from you on LinkedIn.
Yeah.
We might have some exciting content coming up in combination with Sirius Radio, or what's the Fraudster podcast?
Absolutely. So I'll definitely include you in that. So we did a couple episodes. I did a couple last episodes with Seena Ghaznavi, who was working for Sirius XM. I was very interested in looking at the fraud, just widespread. Of course, in the financial institution, but just in all other areas, even bigger scale fraud in the entertainment industry.
Okay.
But at the end of the day, it's still all about motivation, and it's the same, right? It's a psychological element. So We did a couple episodes there where we're actually working on a Fraudsters podcast through Spotify. And this just goes to show, in my opinion, the interest level of this, because that's a big platform and it's being received very well, because I think people just want to try to understand, why, someone maybe that is in a solid financial situation status would take action to try to deviate from that. You know what I mean? So I think this is what's interesting to people. So that's good. So we're actually piloting a few episodes of that, and that will be really exciting if that takes off, because then we can open up different platforms and people like yourself in this field to help promote more widespread basis.
It's all about creating awareness to fraud. I think I truly believe that a lot of these schemes can be just thwarted with simple education. Just getting the word out on common schemes. Sometimes it's a lack of information. So it's cool if we can get some national, in the US at least, attention to the topics
and
on a broader level.
Strengths across the board. Yourself and international. Yeah, absolutely.
It's very cool. Any time frame on that? So when
we're hoping. I mean, we filmed one of the pilots recently, so we're looking at promoting that. I'm hoping within 6 months we'll maybe know. I mean, unfortunately, sometimes things in the industry work a little bit slower. It's either right now or it's hurry up and wait type of thing. So, but we're hoping to get that promoted. But I will definitely keep everyone in the loop on that for sure.
Okay. Yeah. What did you talk about in your first episode there? I mean, you said you did some pilots. What was the topic?
So actually, what's interesting is in certain environments, this is what I find. On Sirius or even in just general media. The public is generally interested, things that maybe we know, the general public doesn't know.
Right.
They don't know the statistics about the millions of dollars in impact from this, and the fact that you and I spend an extra $1,000 a year in increased premiums. This is just auto and home insurance.
Right.
People hear this and they think, wow, how is that possible? Yeah. And then you move into larger scale frauds, and it's when you get into even the Ponzi schemes and even different education fraud, all this it's still the public is becoming, in my opinion, more interested in it because it's more about the why. Why do these people commit these types of crimes? So I think that's what's interesting to me, is I'm seeing more interest from the general public about this. So
all right, so looking forward to that. We'll definitely keep an eye out for it. What would be your top 3 tips to financial?
We did this, last year.
So the interesting thing is, I asked you this in 2018, and I reviewed the content. Okay, so maybe that's changed a little bit. But what do you think would be the top 3 tips? For, let's say, for financial institutions. I don't know. You could also just focus on insurance specifically, but how can they keep themselves safe in 2020?
It's a great thing to talk about this early in the year, for sure. And I think firstly, it's about technology 100%, right? You have to talk about the threats from technology, like I mentioned, with all the platforms now. And it is amazing to me to see what like deep fake technology. Right. What is it? I mean, it's crazy. I don't know if you just the famous YouTube video, the Tom Cruise on SNL, it's unbelievable, because what they do is a producer actually uses that deep fake technology. I can't remember the comedian's name, but he fades in and out of Tom Cruise, and it's scary because he goes into Tom Cruise's face and then back. And I mean, and this is deep fake technology. And what's interesting about this is, this can be done. I mean, you can, send a message with someone else's face. It's creepy, but it's technology that's there. And then, the question after that comes, hey, how do we fight that?
It opens up a ton of avenues for fraud.
So short answer to that is absolutely keep in touch with all the technology platforms that are out there. Self-driving cars, all those things bring, increasing, advantages, but also disadvantages, threats. Right. So I would say absolutely keep an eye on technology. And I would say also, like I mentioned before, the third-party data sources are key. Like there's that balance. You have to manage the data coming in, but if a carrier, no matter what area of finance, looks really, really closely at what data solution, or excuse me, what third-party data sources could be beneficial to them specifically, right to the pain point. They will absolutely see good results. But on the flip side of that, there are a lot of just watered down systems out there. So you have to do your due diligence in looking at those data sources that are there, because they're popping up probably hundreds a day, right? I would say the last one, and I talked about this when we mentioned this a couple years ago, but I'm still seeing this, and that's, I think companies are still doing a good job with those maybe bigger scale items, because they're, flag systems, things are coming up, right? Yeah. But it's these small scale, the quick, low, higher volume, lower exposure cases. What's happening is they're just adding up to almost the same amount as the bigger cases. So I'm really still seeing companies kind of missing the mark with those smaller scale cases. So I would say, look at the big fish, but also don't forget the small ones too, because they're definitely going to add up.
Okay.
So lot to work on this year.
Lot to work on in 2020.
We're going to be busy, David.
Yeah. And so what's any other plans? I mean, we talked about the machine learning school. Yeah. What does your first half of 2020 look like?
Yeah, so I think what's exciting too is the conference circuit as well. So just kind of spreading the word on the awareness of fraud. I think what's interesting too is I've been asked almost to cross speak in different areas, like different industries that maybe wouldn't even think of asking about fraud. So just creating that awareness, underwriting and just finance, even been asked by a bunch of finance companies to do some work on that end. So I think it's kind of exciting to see the threat companies are really seeing how they're vulnerable. Okay. So definitely on the speaking circuit, we stay in touch, of course, and through the website and LinkedIn. I mean, anyone can connect with me and any of the things we talked about or upcoming conferences and things like that. But yeah, a lot of good stuff coming up.
Cool.
So, yeah.
All right. Well, unless you have anything to add, I would say we wrap up the first live episode of the year. And
this was fun.
Yeah. Thanks for being so spontaneous, jumping on after some full days of
course.
Interesting information exchange. We're at the end of it, going into the weekend. So
definitely.
Have a good weekend. Safe travels back. Are you headed back?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Headed back to New York. This weekend. So tomorrow. Yeah.
Then we'll be in touch. Thank you for your time, and thank you to those that joined, and especially Todd. We're looking forward to talking to you next week. And stay tuned for more Fraud Fact Friday.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.